My name's London Breed. I'm president of the San Francisco Board of Supervisors. I represent District 5 on the board, and I would say when I think back to the time that I've been alive in the neighborhood in the Western Addition, in the 80s there was a lot of drugs, a lot of violence, a lot of crack that really destroyed our community. It was a really challenging time. Moving into the 90s, a lot of violence, a lot of gun violence in particular, I think really changed our neighborhood for the worst. We used to have fun and play together in the parks, and just all of the stuff that went on around us didn't always affect us as much as it did when I became a teenager. And it was a really difficult time growing up in the Western Addition, and I was really fortunate to be able to go to college. And what was so heartbreaking is while I was in college in the 90s, so many people, I would get a phone call almost every other day that someone had gotten shot or someone was killed and there was a funeral. And I think violence really destroyed our community. I think as it relates to housing, there was a lot of concentrated poverty in public housing and affordable housing, and most friends who would get good jobs and make decent amounts of money didn't necessarily always qualify for public housing, but couldn't afford to find a decent place to stay, even back then, making good salaries. And so at the time when things were coming down all around us, whether public housing was being torn down and rebuilt, or whether people were choosing to move away because of the violence, there were so many different layers of things that really changed our community in a way that made people feel unsafe, but also I think a big part of it was just the cost of living has always been a real challenge in San Francisco. Things have always been so expensive, and there was no real plan that made sense for both low and middle income residents. It was always the discussions around some low income housing, a lot of market rate housing, and how those things work for the people who live here. It just didn't work.